Hi students, today we are going to see the topic about metal casting processes. There are two categories of casting processes there: expandable mold process and permanent mold process. In expandable mold process, mold is sacrificed to remove parts. In permanent mold process, mold is made of metal and can be used to make many casting. In this lecture, we are going to see an overview of sand casting. In sand casting, we can see most widely used casting process is sand casting. Nearly all alloys can be sand casted, including metal with high melting temperature such as steel, nickel and titanium. Casting range in size from small to very large is possible by using sand casting. Now, stage by stage, how the casting is done, we can see. Pour the molten metal into the sand mold is the first stage. Then, allowing time for metal to solidify, it gives the break up the mold to remove casting. Then, after that, cleaning and inspection of the casting is done. And then, heat treatment of the casting is sometimes required to improve metallurgical properties. Making the sand mold. The cavity in the sand mold is formed by packing sand around a pattern, then separating the mold into two halves and removing the pattern. The mold must also contain gates and riser system. If casting is to have industrial surface, a core must be included in mold. A new stand mold must be made for each part produced. Sand casting production sequence. At the beginning, the core making, if needed, we can create. Pattern making or the replica of the mold which we need, that also we can create. For the required cast design, we prepare the sand mold making process. The raw metal is melted and the melted metal is poured in the created sand mold cavity. Then by pouring it in the runner, it passes through the gateway. From the gateway, the created replica of the mold cavity, the melted metal is getting the space occupied and filled and comes out through the riser outlet. Then we are leaving some particular hours or times or days or weeks according to the solidification and cooling takes place. Then removal of sand mold takes place. After the removal of the sand, cleaning and inspection of the mold which the product is get as a result is done and the casting process is finished. Moving towards pattern, full-sized model of the part slightly enlarged to account for shrinkage and machining allowance in the casting. The pattern material, if we see, wood, metal and plastics are the common pattern materials. Types of pattern. Types of pattern used in sand casting are solid pattern, split pattern, match plate pattern, cope and drag pattern. Core. Full scale model of inner surface of part. The mold metal flows and solidifies between the mold cavity and the core to form the casting external and internal surface. May require supports to hold it in position in the mold cavity during pouring called chaplets. Core plays a major role. If we see the image, core is occupying the place which the solid should not make the gap to fill. Also, these chaplets are mostly the same material which is poured in the mold cavity. The same material chaplets also made. After removing the mold sand material, the core is just removed. Chaplets stayed in the molten metal. Desirable mold properties. Mold should have strength, permeability, thermal stability, collapsibility, reducibility. Foundry sand. If we are seeing in a foundry, silica is the major we are going to place in the sand casting process because it has good refractory properties, smaller grains for better surface finish on parts, larger grain size is more permeable, allowing gases to escape during pouring. Binders used with foundry sands are: sand is held together by mixing of water and bonding clay. For example, 90% of the sand, 3% of the water and 7% of the clay content we are using to create a sand binders. Other bonding agents also used in sand molds are organic resins and inorganic resins. Types of sand mold are green sand mold, dry sand mold, skin dried mold. This green sand mold contains mixture of sand, clay and water. Dry sand mold having organic binders rather than clay. Skin dried molds contains drying mold cavity surface of a green sand mold to a depth of 10 to 25 mm using torches or heating lamp. Other expandable mold process are shell molding, vacuum molding, expandable polyester process, investment casting, plaster molding and ceramic molding process. In this molding process, as an example in the sand casting process, now we can see the shell molding as an example. Shell molding is a casting process in which the mold is a thin shell of sand held together by thermosetting resin. In the image we can see a metal pattern is heated and placed over a box containing sand mixed with the resin. In the shell molding steps, if you see the image, box is inverted so that the sand and the resin fall onto the hot pattern, causing a layer of mixture to partly cure on the surface to form a hard shell. In the image we can see now the box is repositioned so loose uncured particles dropped away. Now we can get the shell layer as the mold cavity. And then the sand shell is heated in over for several minutes to complete curing. Then, as we see in the image, shell mold is stripped from pattern. Two half of the shell mold are assembled, supported by sand or metal shards in a box, and the metal melted pouring is accomplished. The finished casting with sprue is after removal we get the finished product as a result. Like this, by choosing the proper pattern, proper core, proper sand, proper methodology, we are having different kinds of casting processes. Thanks for listening.